Oh, did you come running in because you heard we were about to do something?
Yeah, that is totally what happened. Nick's dog. Nick's dog is saying hi to the internet.
Oh no, he just wanted to lay down on the
Okay.
end of the curtain here. Here, bud.
Nah.
Manipulation.
All right. So welcome to. Oh,
There you
what
go.
is your dog's name?
This is Al. He's ugly cute.
He has like a little tooth sticking up over his
Yeah,
lip.
that's what makes him ugly cute.
Ow, oh my goodness. Okay. So today Nick and I
I'm starting this off right. We're gonna get the puppy crowd involved,
okay.
right? Okay.
And what is that one's name?
This is Monkey.
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 Monkey and L. Okay. Awesome.
You guys are about to rip that down. Come on. There we go.
All right, so I get just connected chat too, so if anyone comes in wants to chat in, we'll be able to see it. So yeah, hey, welcome everyone. Nick and I. Nick is my friend who's like also a hypnotist, and we are going to be talking today about everything is figure-outable, which is another way of saying cultivating a growth mindset. And I was thinking about this today because we were, we kind of were riffing on a little bit of streaming problems last night, right?
Thank you.
And so Nick and I today, we're not going to be actually doing any hypnosis beyond, oh, we just lost Nick. We're going to be doing a little bit of NLP techniques, things that you can self-apply in the moment to change the way that you're feeling or thinking about something. But we're also just going to be hanging out and chatting, and we might draw a few cards. That is how Nick and I like to roll. And the reason why we're streaming this today is because whenever we get together just to video chat online, the ideas just start coming and we get so excited. And every single time we talk, I just think, man, I wish we were recording this. So here we are today, just recording things. And I don't know. I wonder where Nick went. I'm gonna minimize him if he's not gonna be there streaming with me.
I'm still here. My cam just kind of crashed out on me.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
predictable, right?
I will. There you are. Are you there? No. This is funny though. You're kind of demonstrating everything. You're raising your hand. Uh, did I just jinx us by saying everything is figure-outable and then you have like a teachable moment here where you can't get your camera to work?
It all shut down on me.
All right. Well, let's just demonstrate having a growth mindset here. Nick. Yeah, so apropos of our stream last night, we were trying to figure out how to go live on TikTok, and then it became apparent that the thing that we were looking for wasn't there. The stream key, we were looking for a stream key. And our cards knew it before we did. Oh, there's your picture. That's an improvement. And I drew this card, the depleted, which was basically, I believe the card saying that we had run into a dead end with the TikTok stream key, and that we were looking for something that wasn't there. Nick, if you're having problems, usually, like, I used to work in tech support when I was in college. There's 9 times out of 10, if you just like reboot your computer, it will work. Could try that.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna have to do.
Yeah, just try it. Try the reboot. See if everything's plugged in, and then yeah, he will be back my friends. I'm just going to continue to stream without him because that is what we're here for. I wonder, so now that we have had this lovely teachable moment already, I'm gonna draw a card to see if the 40 servants have anything to say about this. So I'm gonna roll my dice because that's how I do this one. And I pulled the 14, number 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. And the card that we pulled is the moon. Now, the interesting thing about the moon is that it makes things seem different than they do during the day. It casts a light on things, but it's not a bright light. It's kind of a shadowy light. And it's often used, especially in the tarot, to talk about things that are just beneath the surface, or things that have to do with like underneath the water, because it's associated with the tides, right? The moon pulls the tides. It's also associated with cycles. And I'm very curious when Nick comes back. All right, Nick, add to stream. Oh, there you are. Perfect. I drew a card while you were gone.
Okay.
And the card that I drew was the moon from the 40 sermons.
Okay.
And I was reflecting on how that has to do with kind of like, it has to do with the subconscious, and it also has to do with cycles. And I was wondering if the moon, if you relate to the moon in any particular way, especially apropos of your little tech issues.
Well, yeah, I mean, the moon is, especially the new moon, is very well connected to Hecate, who I am very well connected to, if it's not presumptuous to say that. I think she would let me know if it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm very much like the night personality, too. Like, I don't like being awake during the day. There's that bright glowing thing, and it hurts the eyes and gives you skin cancer.
Oh, yes. You are still waking up. I forgot that. You were having your morning coffee.
Night person in my cup of a terrible company. Yeah. But yeah, no, the moon's also often been the symbol of knowledge you don't know, whether it's hidden from you or whether you just don't know it yet, too. Which is kind of a big thing, like going live. I've never done it before, so I am kind of stepping out into the unknown in a way.
I love that. Yeah, I love that, and I love that we're doing it more regularly, and I love it that we have so many different ways to do it. I love it. The planet.
The planet came up just now here with, expanding your orbits, clearing a lot of the crap out of your orbits, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So moon and planet.
So I had, all right, so we are going to circle back to everything is Figure-Outable, but I'm going to find a way to tie what I have to say into that. Yeah. The other day I had a frustrating little experience, which I told you about, where somebody that was just trying to like get into my headspace and violate my boundaries, basically. It's trying to, what do I call it? It's trying to slurp on me.
Do you have to go with the visuals?
And as I held my boundaries with him, I realized that not allowing somebody that is a stranger to drain me, it's a growth step for me. In the past, I used to really let things like that get to me, and I used to let it drain me, and I used to let it prevent me from going public. Like I used to let it like make me afraid of making videos or having much of an online presence, because if people find me, then they can take my time. And that is now I realize that is not true. And that that circles back to the planet for one thing, because the planet is about clearing away the things that were the debris in your orbit, right? Like clearing a path for your orbit. And then second of all, that has to do with the growth mindset, because it is also recognizing the growth. So here's a little hypno tip for everyone who's watching. Every time you recognize and reiterate something that you just learned, that actually like consolidates that learning in your memory. Like it actually like amplifies your learning. It cements and solidifies the way that lesson lands in your nervous system. So, I mean, it's great when you learn something, but it's even better when you can recognize and articulate it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why journaling is so good too. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like journaling. Journaling, that's something I have a lot of my clients do, especially when I have them going through what I call the sludge protocol, which is pulling everything out and, reframing, spinning, and altering. And it's the first step in the memory reconsolidation program that I do now.
Nice.
But you're absolutely right. And I think that one of the things that really holds us back as a species is the way our memory system works. Because when you think about all the data that the unconscious mind has to process, like 100 million units a second, something like that, 100,000, 100 million.
It's a lot.
Basically. But that's all 5 sensory roots plus any extra sensory roots. Some people have more than others. But, and then it's always just kind of looking at everything and deciding what's important and relevant, but it only uses your unconscious cues from your memory for that.
Right.
So you only ever find those memories that match your current mood. That memory comes out
That's
of the...
why when you're feeling bad about yourself, you start obsessing about all the things that make you feel unhappy.
Yep.
All the memories that reinforce that negative self-image, or all the ways that people done you wrong, make you feel like that's all you ever get in life, and you don't remember all the ways that people were kind to you, or all the ways that people validated you, or all the ways that people affirmed you and thought that you were special or smart or interesting. So
yeah, and this world is built to stress us out, so we're just these little balls of stress and depression and self-loathing that wander through life clumsily barreling into each other, continually pulling out those memories, reframing them, restructuring them, literally rewriting our personal pasts so that we forget how much ass we kick, and we forget all the victories we have, and we forget that... I think I remember reading something like the odds of a person even existing exceed... I don't even remember the number, but it was like a number with 100 zeros after it to 1. Like the fact that you even exist is a sign of some sort of divine providence. So, we need to wander through life powerfully, always remembering that, instead of, running around and doing more than just being aware of the problems in the world right now.
yeah, I think that's okay. So that is another thing that I wanted to bring into this. Okay, so when we say everything is figure-outable, I mean that in a localized way, but I also mean that in a very global way as well. So, we can think about some of the problems that we're facing in our own personal lives and our day-to-day challenges, like, how to get the stream key for TikTok and how to go live and blah, 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 or how to get out of a negative mind loop. But we can also think about this in terms of some of the greater challenges that humanity is facing today. I think that it is so important to disconnect from some of the really toxic negative thought streams that are out there. I mean, it's useful to be aware of real things that are happening in the world that we should be concerned about and that we should stand up against. But also, I think that it's useful to keep in mind that everything is figure-outable. And once we even just kind of affirm that, or open up the question, how can we turn our attention towards a solution for this? How can we address this? We open up a space where solutions can come.
Yeah, and it's super important to listen, obviously to your knowledge, but to your intuition as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when you open up that space, when you learn how to do that, like weird things start to happen that let you do that. Like
Yeah.
I literally, the thought just popped up in my head. Oh shit! Can I say that? No. Oh crap! Um, I need to turn my phone down. And the second that hit down to 0 on the volume scale, a call just rolled through. Would have just blasted over this. But
Hooray!
yeah, it's you know me. I'm almost a conspiracy theorist. It's no accident that the world is set up to deprive us of the opportunity to set up that confidence in ourselves, to allow us to feel safe and feeling open enough to have those moments when we can remember how powerful we are.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Um, I was super gratified the other day when I was watching a stream by a psychic when he talked about how the the intuition and the creative mind are the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Intuition and the creative mind are the same thing. So the more we open up to our creativity, the more we open up our intuition, and vice versa. That is like super interesting. That is what I've been kind of like coming to through my work with hypnosis. What I've been kind of opening up to is
Mm-hmm.
like what happens in trance, right? Um, and I just love hearing it described that way, because I think that if people recognize that more, they would have less apprehension about both, right? Like,
Yes.
right. I think that yeah, and so, and in the same way that we, you know, maybe we want to be discerning about what we create, we may not want to create just anything. I
Mm-hmm.
think that the same thing can be said about how we use our intuition too. Like, we might not want to send our intuition anywhere.
Mm.
Like, uh, and when we send either one, when we send our creative energy, our attention, or our intuition in places where they don't need to go, or we don't want them to go, at least the feedback that we get from that is part of our learning,
Mm-hmm.
which circles back to everything is figure-outable.
Yeah, absolutely. And with intuition, like when your intuition is honed to the point that it's psychic.
Mm-hmm.
For example, like we've talked about this before. Like when I get into spending large amounts of time communicating with people, there are times where I literally hear what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
It happens all the time to anyone who does even a little bit of energy work.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody used to think, oh, hey, that's kind of cool, because I would freak people out. I would tell them what song was playing in their head
Mm-hmm.
or stuff like that. But
Right.
I was dating somebody who had a lot of problems at that point in time. I'll be charitable and put it that way. And it wasn't fun finding out that she was cheating on me that way. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Intuition and creativity are innately linked, but it is much more important to learn how to wield that intuition
Yeah.
properly, because
And
once you learn more about everything around you, there's kind of no going back from some things.
it is tough. And I think when you said that, it actually reminded me of something. There is a little bit of a stereotype that there's like a high correlation between creativity and mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I've seen that play out in my own life. Some of the most creative people that I have known have also been some of the most tortured people that I've known. And I love them dearly nonetheless, but still, that also might circle back to what I perceive to be a little bit of a fear of the creative mind or the intuitive mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's one of those things like the moon. When we understand more, when we learn more about it, then we don't have to be afraid. There's nothing like inherently afraid of. There's nothing inherently scary about a moonlight night, right? Except what we don't know, right? The fears that we can project too.
Yeah, yeah. It's when I'm working with somebody, and I haven't done this in a while, but when I'm working with somebody in terms of like archetypal hypnosis or depth hypnosis, seeing what's really under there so that they could look at some of the uh, deeper, darker, shadowy parts. I always have to tell them, like, and I like the analog that you used of the moonlit night. You're not afraid of the dark. You're not afraid of the dark night. You're afraid of what might be in there, which is never as bad as you think that it is. And that's
Yeah.
that's true. Like here in this part of Texas, we've got coyotes and a bobcat in the area, so I'm careful when I walk my dog. But I'm not afraid of the night itself. I'm just cautious that at some point, some coyotes might come after.
Well,
come
there are
after the
even
area.
worse things than coyotes. I was just watching this YouTube about the ghoulies that live in the woods and mountains of Appalachia.
Oh yeah. I've got somebody in my life who is from those areas, and we walk out at night. And I like to whistle when I walk sometimes, and it's been made very clear to me you do not whistle at night when you walk anywhere near Appalachia.
No.
But yeah, that's a thing. It's the things.
So there are things to be afraid of, but also well, I also think, even with things like that, like awareness, putting your awareness on safety, that's like the best protection too, right?
Yeah.
Messenger.
I think the messenger came up on that, and I think that makes a lot of sense with what we're talking about, putting your awareness on finding that message from on high. And being able to detect, to listen through the noise, basically, to set aside that voice that tells you all the things you did wrong in third grade, however many years ago that was, in the middle of the night, and to listen to the voice of spirit or a god or somebody who gives a crap about you, maybe your ancestors.
What I think of when I see the messenger in the context of what you were just talking about is, that myth of Persephone and Hades, and then there was like the Mercury, the messenger, that went down with his like winged boots to go deliver a message to Persephone, right? So like going between like the conscious and the subconscious mind, like mediating between those two realms. Like I think that's like what you and I do so much with hypnosis, right? And then like having that communication between the upper and lower realms, like that is what allows you to integrate information in a way that is useful to you and can keep you safe too.
Yeah, definitely. And being safe is important, but there's a point in time, and a lot of people will do this, where their efforts to keep them safe translate as efforts to keep comfortable. And the two are not the same. And that was something that I learned at the cost of many bruises in the martial arts, is that safety and comfort are not the same damn thing. Sometimes you have to get up close and personal with what you feel at the moment is dangerous, whether that's an opponent in the ring or whether that is actually sitting with the uncomfortable understanding of where your life is at a certain moment. And you work with addicts too, so I mean, you know exactly what that's like. They have to come to the understanding of, yes, I've made mistakes, and that is not a critique of me as an individual. That is simply a human reality, and that can be uncomfortable. But yeah,
the part of us that wants to keep us safe is so often the locus of the problem that you're experiencing, whatever it is. Like whether I don't want to do the thing that I need to do in order to progress or move forward or grow, like where I'm just snacking on things to the point, like it's comforting in a way, but it's also taking away some aspects of my health that I value and want to maintain or improve, right? So we're negotiating with the part of our mind that wants to keep us safe is a necessary part of like mental health housekeeping. And yeah, because we can't stop growing. We can't stop
Oh,
growing and learning.
yeah. Yeah. I do want to put like an addendum to what you just said.
Hmm.
The most shocking thing that I learned when I was getting my degree in psychology was the realities that our definition of mental health, and this is so important to realize for people in any magical art or even hypnosis, which itself is also a magical art, is that our definition of mental health basically boils down to, can you work a job? Like, that's the gold standard. You are determined to be mentally ill to a degree that will require full intervention if you are not able to work a job, which translates as if you can't make money for someone else.
Totally.
So it's so strange to think that this gold standard that we say, that we critique each other and ourselves on, of mental health.
Oh yeah, no, it's totally
Yeah.
like colonialist, capitalist,
Mhm.
all sorts of problematic. This idea of mental health,
Yes.
but so much. I've also, kind of, to circle back to creatives, found that so many people
Mhm.
like actually were just trying to find a way to like express their creativity,
Mhm.
and when we don't have an outlet for that, it can turn upon itself and make you sick. So
Yes. And that's where I was actually circling back to as well. So many people who are creative, the artists, are often called mad, they're often called crazy.
mhm.
Van Gogh, for example. I mean, wonderful example there, Captain. Here's a less. But I don't know why I said that. But people who tap into that part of themselves very often don't fit into our conveniently packaged definitions of what is healthy and what is not.
Yeah, definitely.
And,
Um,
but that
it's
creativity is so important for things being figure-outable.
Everything is figure-outable.
Mhm.
Everything is figure-outable. I just drew the road opener.
Nice. I can't show the card I just drew.
Oh yeah, it's probably not going to go on YouTube.
Yeah, no, that would not work well. But the road opener was right behind that one, so
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Nice.
That's one thing I do appreciate about the 40 servants, is that they aren't sanitized. They aren't that creative element, actually, that we're talking about there is fully present in that, without being completely grotesquely inappropriate, as some people have done in the past.
Definitely. Definitely. Um yeah, so I think that mental health is more expansive than our limited Western psychology definition of it, for sure, for sure. And that is like one of the reasons why I like hypnosis too, because it doesn't have the same parameters. I like it that it kind of delves into things that makes people, even me, uncomfortable, including
Mhm.
like, you know, paranormal phenomena, or things that I've like
Mhm.
had a lot of questions about, like past life regressions, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily always get behind everything that people do with hypnosis,
Mhm.
but I love it that it is one of those things that you could take pretty much anywhere. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like, um, I like it that it kind of blurs the line between what is real and what is not, or like, what is of this dimension and what is not, what is
Mhm.
physical, what is mental, what is spiritual, it is and what is therapeutic versus what is entertainment.
Mhm.
And um so I just, I think that that's all very interesting, valuable aspect, and I think that it is also a very, very creative modality.
Yeah, and hypnosis, in some ways, when you do it in certain ways, let me specify that, is so similar to both influencing and domination magic in some ways.
Hmm.
You want to stay away from the domination stuff, generally speaking, if you're working with clients, of course. But if you need to have a conversation, a more stern conversation, for somebody to leave you alone, I've had really good success combining cord cutting techniques along with that, very subtle wording and such. Now, I mean, you know me, I'm 6'4", so generally speaking, people leave me alone when I want them to.
Hmm.
But that particular skill set is something that's helped a lot of my students in the past as well.
Hmm.
Because you can combine those two, absolutely. And it's another really good example of the, figure-outability and the applicability of blending those skill sets and letting your intuition kind of be your guide. Because ultimately, hypnosis and magic, both highly intuitive, even the
Hmm.
most, you know, uh, set in stone ritual elements have that intuitive angle to them.
Right. Yeah. Um, yeah, my mind was just wandering to kind of like circling back to blending hypnosis and magic, and
Hmm.
like when I first became certified in hypnosis, I made a choice that I wanted to not go in that direction. I wanted to language what I was doing in such a way that it would appeal to doctors or medical professionals or therapists if they were like whatever. And I kind of have like gotten circled back, like the pendulum has swung in the other direction, so to
Hmm.
speak. I think that if with like all respect to science, like I do deeply respect science, but I also feel like I've never really like even just looking at hypnotist academic scholars that want to argue about whether hypnosis is state or role.
Hmm.
um, I just find that argument incredibly boring. I'm like, why would you want to like sit around and devote your life to arguing about what is happening rather than just experience it?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. There's a level of dissociation involved in psychology studies, and I remember I argued with many professors politely over that because I was a full blown professional hypnotist when I went and got my degree,
mhm.
and a lot of them were like, "Well, this is how this is," and I'm just kind of like, "What are you talking about? Like the Aronson's depth scale? No, that's nonsense."
Mhm.
Um,
Sometimes
and
I'll teach the Aaron's depth scale just as a like a historical artifact, right?
Mhm.
It's just
Yeah,
like
yeah, like
this is
the old spinning hypno wheel is kind of where that belongs in that era in
this
that box.
is how some people think about it, or some people have thought about it in the past. But yeah, more and more I'm starting to even question that value,
Mhm.
because I think there's a lot of stuff that gets left out that's important. Like,
Yeah.
the history of women and minorities and the history of hypnosis,
Mhm.
or trance-based practices that have arisen in all cultures, right?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah, and I think the weakness of it is that these scientists are judging all of their work. Every single study on hypnosis currently that's been done is basically based off of progressive relaxation scripts read by
Hmm.
grad students. Like that's it. That is a
Yeah.
slice of altered state of consciousness technologies.
Yeah.
And they don't look at there's no longitudinal studies beyond. I think the only longitudinal studies I've seen are for IBS and for smoking cessation. And they don't really want to study smoking cessation too much because that's real hard to judge because they slice it so thin, and they will consider desire to smoke a failure, as opposed to as hypnotists where like you had a desire to smoke and you chose not to. Dope.
Yeah, right? You had a desire to smoke and you apply the technique that I taught you to remove it.
Exactly.
I think that, yeah, you have to allow for the fact that your nervous system has to accommodate what you just did.
Hmm. And it's a difference in language and a difference in studyability. Setting up experimental formats that are bulletproofed in psychology is very difficult, and they don't do a lot of peer review, so a lot of their stuff gets out there. But I think that if we apply our figure-outableness to science, I think
Hmm.
things get a little murky because science makes the claim we're going to figure everything out, but the only thing they really figure out is that there are more questions at the end
Well,
of their experiments.
so the thing that I think is really interesting about that is, all right, so part of like questioning science, I would say, is actually respect for science. Like, I think that like a scientific mind is always going to be like, I would like to like look into this. Like, did you look at this? Did you consider this? Like, and then I mean, ideally, like if there were like resources to do that, to like have another study where you like test your hypothesis.
Mhm.
But then the other thing that I think is just tricky for psychology in general is that humans are creative and we're always evolving. So we get like these new ideas, new concepts, new language, and it actually like changes the way that we experience reality or changes the way that we
Yeah.
think about something. And so now suddenly not everyone is talking about the same thing when they use that word, and not everyone is having the same response to it. That's interesting. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, like, and I'm even thinking about, some of the live streams that I have lined up for this channel, like, concepts such as tulpas or reality shifting or that sort of thing. And how would you begin to study that when not everyone defines it in the same way or experiences it in the same way?
Yeah. Well, okay. So, what I like to tell people when I'm trying to explain that reality is not what everyone thinks it is, there is no objective reality that we can concretely prove. Like the screen behind me, right? Or my shirt, black.
Mm-hmm.
But what is black for me could be something else entirely in the world of Marion. What you perceive, I might call pink. There's no way for us to know that because we're not able to, sync our brains. In that very same way, no people are going to have that same concrete understanding of reality. There's no possible way. Our sensory sets, our memory systems, every single part of us that we use as a filter to experience things is going to be different. So I think it's not that we have to prove that there's objectivity, it's that we have to accept that we are dealing with multiple subjectivity at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a key element in any therapeutic modality, for example.
Yeah,
Because,
definitely.
because
Yeah,
if,
definitely. I think that the moment that you assume that you know what somebody else's reality is like, you're like in great
Mhm.
peril of doing them a disservice.
Yeah, yeah. When you start telling them, how their life is, that's when you start losing clients, unless they're that, you know, select personality that just came to you to be told, which happens.
Yeah.
People do.
No, the thing is, even if somebody comes in like that, for me, like I want to introduce them into a possible reality where they could be a different way, right? Like
Hmm.
they could be in exercising agency over their own reality.
Yeah, I mean that's the ideal, and that's
Because
the
the thing
interesting.
is, sorry,
No, no, but
if you are always needing someone to tell you what to do, you are definitely probably going to end up as a cult in a cult, right?
mhm.
Like probably multiple cults, right?
Yeah, instead of polyamory, it's polyculty. So yeah, I'm in 3 different
No,
cults.
but like I'm just saying that there's plenty of people out there that will want to tell you what to do, but most of them are going to want to take advantage of that, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean let's face it. There's no shortage of so and so's like
Mhm.
that. I keep forgetting I'm live and we're not just recording this. There's so many people like that in magic and in hypnosis and in therapy as well. The
There's people
number,
like that everywhere.
yeah,
Like
it's
there
weird.
are unscrupulous people everywhere, but I think that the kind of like the to kind of go back to the moon, right? Like
Mhm.
when we what what we can't see about that is what is dangerous about that. But once we have more information, then we can
Mhm.
be aware of that and act accordingly.
Yeah, and in fact, there's a there's a number of rituals too get into that headspace and ask your intuition or ask your deity or your ancestors or whoever for clarity, but you have to know that something's hidden first. So I
I
think that
yesterday, or was it maybe the day before, I was doing a protection ritual, like doing the sword banishing, and that was like when I discovered that one of the doors to my house was unlocked because my sensor kept going off. And it actually, I had to silence it because I think the battery is dying. But it was just interesting that while I was doing that ritual, I found like a security issue with my doors, literally.
yeah, someone's just kind of like, okay, we'll take care of this, but you need to go throw the deadbolt. Go kill it.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny how many times with protection magics or with hypnosis for self improvement, we keep expecting these big miraculous changes. Like we expect somebody who threatens us in magic to something bad to happen to them. Maybe they get hit by a car or they just vanish one day or whatever. But so much of it really is just that subtle nudge to go do what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why so many times, like I've run into so many baby witches who pray for patience. And that is always such a huge mistake. They will ask someone bigger than them, help me to develop patience. It's like, well, you sign for it now, because the only way to do that is to go through so much that you have to practice patience during. So prepare for frustration. That's a good example of bad figure-outability.
I had someone in our circles said something that really stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
It was such an interesting thing to say to me. I want to have something original to say, but I don't want to have a hard life experience to go through in order to find it. And I thought that was like, well, that's like really self-aware, interesting thing to say.
It's also one of those like practically impossible things to deliver too. How are you going to learn an important life lesson without going through the discomfort required?
Well, and then interestingly enough, the same person, I think it was a different conversation. I was talking about the labyrinth, right? You said you were there.
Yeah.
And she said, oh yeah, one time I walked a labyrinth and I didn't really get anything out of it. I didn't see the point. And so I was like, well, can you describe what happened to me? And so she described this thing, which was basically her mind telling her that she was doing it wrong. And I was like, that is the message that the mirror was reflecting back to you. That's the thing that you're doing with your mind, that it was like you were being shown as you were doing that. And she thought that that was like so profound. And if you like kind of like apply recursion to that insight, you could say that person probably has been through enough that she could process it. She doesn't have to go through more hard stuff.
Yeah.
She already has stuff in her that hasn't been excavated yet.
She was just scared to look at what she'd already been through. Yeah. And that is so concretely true for most of us. We're always looking at least 5 to 20 seconds ahead, much, not to mention the people who plan even farther than that. Never in this moment, and very rarely looking behind us.
Right.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting.
And that's also the thing of the labyrinth too, is that like sometimes when you're going forwards, it feels like you're going backwards. Sometimes when you're going forwards, it feels like, am I doing this right? Am I actually going to get to where I think I'm going to? It's a little bit confusing. But if you just stay with the process, you will get somewhere, and then you will also see something that it's showing you.
Yeah. And I mean, shoot, there are so many rituals that I've asked to actually help figure out a number of things that I have to sit with for months to years. And it's kind of funny when, on the rare occasion I have a student who asks really interesting questions. One of the best questions, I shouldn't phrase it that way, but a student who asked a really interesting question once was, what is reality like for spirits who are not bound in material, right? And I tried explaining it some channeled information about how humans, we're fourth dimensional that we're aware of, but we only see that one slice of time at a time, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the reality of it is, in the fourth dimension, we start at birth, and then there's this long, undulating, snake-like entity that is us that weaves through, multiple dimensions and then stops at your end in some way, shape, or form. For a spirit, many of them can see time the same way that we would look at a map. So something that is fourth or fifth dimensional is able to look at this entire thing and interact with us at those different coordinates. Coordinates for us would just be moments of time. So it's not uncommon for people to get a mystical experience at point A in their life, and then point B might be years later.
Integrating that or figuring out what that actually meant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the source, the intuitive source or the spiritual source where that information comes from, doesn't give a hang about being stuck in 3 dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same as if we're reading a book, you or I read a book, and we know the main character gets the foreshadowing clue on page 2, and then that clue comes to, fruition on page 15. Still the same story, still the same point in time
All the same
for
story.
them. But for us, stuck in our meat suits, it can be really frustrating to have to
It'd
try
be
to
really
figure something
frustrating
out.
to not know what that was all about. What good was that? Um, but a really good question to ask yourself if you're wondering is, what am I learning?
Mm.
Right? What am I learning from this? And you don't have to answer it. Just open up that question space. You ask yourself, what am I learning from this? And then just, pay attention to what comes up for you in the coming day or weeks or whatever. Like, just kind of opening that space allows space for some of those answers to come in if it is time for them to come.
And one thing that I've noticed is the more that you practice this, the quicker those answers tend to come.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I first started practicing witchcraft, it was just like everybody does. I think I didn't start with Buckland's Big Blue book the way so many people do when they just kind of like, what's Wicca? And then they open it up. But you would get into that headspace and ask for an answer, and something would happen weeks to months later. Whereas these days, with those big important questions, sometimes those answers just pop right up. So just like anything else, intuition and figure-outability, it is a skill set that you practice. It's a muscle that you develop. And the more options that you give yourself by practicing that, opening the headspace for it,
Mm-hmm.
the better you get at it. And it's really interesting to watch that process unfold when you get that rare opportunity to watch somebody who starts with the difficult part, goes through the sparkle phase where they get everything that they want for about a week or two, and then they have to put the work in until years later they're highly competent people.
Yeah. I think that is one of the things, one of the, I guess, critiques I have against the law of attraction community is that it seems like a bunch of people just want the good part only,
Yeah.
right? The easy part only. And actually, like, some of the challenges that we have to work through in life are some of the places where we do our greatest learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
More dogs,
Yeah,
monkeys.
he just wanted, no, that was Al. He just wanted to show the world what's behind the curtain, and as the Wizard of Oz, that is not allowed. Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. Well, let's see. Do we have anything else to say about figure-outability? Everything is figure-outable.
Yeah,
It's a
no.
hypothesis. It's a hypothesis. We're going to have to test that out. Oh, I liked, before we began this recording, you said everything is figure-outable, but it may not be figure-outable in this lifetime, which is the frustrating thing.
Yes.
And like, okay, so here's another, I'll say, controversial thing.
Mm-hmm.
Learning puts you in a privileged position over people who haven't yet learned. So that means that privilege is a learnable thing,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't remove the power dynamic, right? And it also doesn't remove even like just the difference between learning something at 50 versus having grown up with it your entire life. That it sits in your nervous system different, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's like
Learning.
these long running momentums that are different, right?
Yeah. Learning is definitely it's the first step
Mm-hmm.
in dismantling a power system. And the first thing anybody has to learn, of course, is, that there is a power system. And that's the most difficult part, is no matter what it is you're fighting for or who it is you're fighting against, the most difficult part is getting people to take the blinders off their eyes
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that there is a problem. And people will fight that tooth and nail. They'll, argue it. You'll get stuck in Facebook echo groups. Please get out of those.
Or
Or
they'll learn to play the victim card too. I think that people
expertly.
inappropriately say, "Oh, because I am a man or because I am white, now I'm like disempowered because now everyone is woke or whatever." Like
It goes the other direction too, and that's part of taking the blinders off. Because,
it does.
and
It
I
goes,
say this 100% without misogyny,
yeah.
but there's a growing understanding in psychotherapeutic fields now that we need to adapt our language, because many women, especially young women in couples counseling, will terminate therapy, couples therapy or single therapy, the moment that the therapist calls them out on victim carding.
Yeah.
When they have to face responsibility for, for example, the stereotypical thing that comes through is young ladies are like, my boyfriend won't open up to me. In fact, I put this on Facebook the other day. And then the therapist says, well, you remember the argument that you told me that you had where he shared something important and vulnerable and you used it against him.
Mm-hmm.
And that responsibility, they right out the door because they have a privilege of their own that they never want.
Oh, I am entitled to not foster empathy for my partner.
Yeah, right. Exactly. What? No one has that power. What the hell? But yeah, getting people to realize the realities of their situation in a macrocosmic, or I should say a meta view.
Yeah, and also
It's
to
so
take
difficult.
responsibility for the fact that what you do in your little microcosm might be good for you at this level, but it's not good for everyone to do that. Like, and I think that is like a longer. So that actually leads into something that I really want to talk about. I keep talking about it. I really want to make a video about egregores, right?
Yes.
What you're talking about is like the long-term learning trajectory of an egregore, right?
Oh yeah.
So.
We definitely.
An egregore, for if this is the first time that you've heard of an egregore is like the mind of a group, right? So it's like kind of learning at that collective or macrocosmic level.
Yeah, it gets its own sentience at a certain point and things get really slippery. Yeah.
So that's, how we get like cultural trends, and that's how we get like cultural blind spots. And then what you're talking about, Nick, I think is also learning through some of our cultural blind spots, right?
Yeah. Which is that's always an assault on the concept of self, which humans will fight tooth and nail 10 times out of 10. We do not like seeing the ugly reality of ourselves because those blinders and rose-colored glasses are so much prettier. But yeah, sorry, I sidetracked from egregores. Let's go back to that.
No. That was good. I mean, this video is not about egregores. This is about how everything is figure-outable, but it does transition nicely into thinking about, that form of thought form, right?
Yeah, definitely. And there are so many egregores out there to take a look at. There's a movie from, I think, the early aughts called Branded, which you'll probably have a hard time finding it. I don't even think it's being streamed right now. But it's about a guy who ends up, he gets dosed with something, I don't remember what, And he has a little bit of what he thinks is a psychotic break, but he begins to see these spiritual entities hidden behind corporate powers.
Oh my God, this actually happened to my friend. Like, I had a friend that this happened to.
Oh, good.
Like,
But
is
yeah,
this a movie
and,
about my
yeah.
friend?
But
Like,
the guy's a marketer, and he
it
starts
probably happened in
running.
the early aughts too. Go ahead.
The guy's a marketer, and he starts running marketing campaigns targeting these particular thoughts and opinions about corporations. So as he's basically starts pitting these spiritual forces against each other and just watching them destroy each other, he's seeing these companies come tumbling down, and marketing campaigns, which they're brainwashing. It's what they are. It's what they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Just dry up and fade away.
So
So it's
that's why the
interesting.
egregores don't want you to see them. I mean, this is according to my friend that suddenly saw them,
Yeah.
is that they don't want you to see them because that gives you power over them. Like, if you know what that egregore, like if you can see it as a being and you can kind of see it as something that you can do therapy on, that means that you have influence over it, which means that you have power over it. And that is dangerous to it potentially.
So yeah and no. Like I can see how he would think that. And with baby egregores, sure, itty bitty egregores, right? Like
Well,
everybody who
maybe
hangs out
like
with.
narcissistic LA egregores.
You're trying to provoke me, and I'm not gonna like say a certain name, but um, but yeah, the people get stuck up in their own personal egregores, and that personal egregore, yeah, you can hammer somebody down with their personal image, which is what their egregore is.
No,
Once
but
they're
even
out
like
there.
a small group or something like that.
Small groups you can do too, but let's say you become aware of Google's egregore,
Right.
right? Yeah, you're not going to do boo to Google all by yourself. You can become aware of that. It's
You can
still going
become
to like,
aware of it, and it's probably going to want to learn from you.
yeah, exactly.
Like,
The moment you become more aware of it, it just scrapes more of your data to sell.
right? Exactly.
Yeah, but if we go, here's a good example. So we've seen the egregore of Christ change over and over and over and over and over again over the past centuries. That's a really good example of how you do co-opt and control an egregore. Is you find the people who feed the concept, the conceptual food to the egregore. Oh, this is what Christ is, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
When the Christ image first began, it was a conglomeration of different Greco-Roman deities stemming from the Middle East records, right?
Right.
And it was this completely unrecognizable form from what we have now. But people were going into these churches first on the outliers of major areas and teaching different versions of Christ that were very convenient to what they needed at the time. Soon the Holy Roman Empire emerged and kind of through the power of Rome, created this more consolidated concept of Christ and then spread it out. And now all you have to do is wander through Southern America and talk to different people, even different churches of the same denomination, and say, who is Christ? And you're going to have different versions depending on who you talk to. So
Yeah, wildly different versions.
yeah. So you can't really gain control over a large egregore by just being aware of them. But if you find the people who believe into it and you find its food sources and you start changing that,
No, but I mean, I think
definitely
that
do
was
that.
like part of it is like knowledge is power. So if you can see it clearly, you can also know what levers to push.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's my short way of saying I want to start a cult very soon. I don't know who I'm going to make my cult head yet. I'll think about it. Yeah, I'll pick a good godhead.
Nice. Okay, Nick. Thank you for joining me for this awesome. Everything is figure-outable. We're continuing the process of figuring things out. If there's anything that you haven't figured out yet, feel free to drop about it in the comments. We're gonna, if you also just remember that question that we had, that what am I learning from this? If you take that step out of your experience and you kind of look at it from a meta perspective or from a third person perspective, oftentimes you're going to be able to get some information. It's going to give you some insight into what it is that you're learning, what it is, and then when you open up that intuitive space, you are likely going to recognize the next step.
Undoubtedly.
Mm-hmm.
In some way, shape, or form. And sometimes you'll only learn it unconsciously and it'll come up years later and you'll just notice things got better.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing wrong with that.
Right. Nick, remind us what your channel is.
Liberation Hypnosis at
Okay.
YouTube, and I'm at liberationhypnosis.com.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. All right. More soon.
See you.